Welcome to part 6 of the series where we're building a web page using HTML and CSS in Dreamweaver uh, based on a mock-up that we've been working from and trying to reproduce using HTML and CSS. We made it pretty far so far. We've done some pretty decent work, images, navigation bars. We've got our content area looking pretty sharp. We still have a bit of work to do here in the sidebar, our logo, and a couple of other, things here and there to clean up. The next thing we're probably going to tackle in this part of the drill is working with the sidebar and getting a few things in order there. Primarily, the little form, the little sign-up form. Now, obviously, it's not going to be a functional sign-up form. That goes way beyond the scope of this tutorial, but basically we'll put in the form elements that eventually can be activated if the proper tools are in place. This Facebook feed over here, as I mentioned, this page, it's probably not going to be published on the web. So having a live Facebook feed would be very difficult to do because of security concerns. But what we will do is insert a placeholder image to fake it. But the social media icons down here, which we will insert, will be functional, and you'll be able to share this page with other social media networks. But before we do the sidebar, we'll tackle one thing that we left out in part 5, which was the button. The Read More button is not like a form button. They look the same. They're, visually they have the same typeface, the same color, the same outline, etc. But they're not the same thing behind the scenes. Now, this is an actual submission form button for the form, and that uses a different set of code. Whereas these links over here, the Read More buttons, they resemble more the links that we've created here in the navigation bar, in that they're just hypertext links that we've stylized to look prettier. Now, we're not going to spend too long, building this button from scratch. It's like reinventing the wheel at some point. I assume you know enough by this point to be able to do it if you had to. But what we're going to do is use a third-party website called css3buttongenerator.com. So let's bring that in there. So here's the URL, whoops, sorry, css3buttongenerator.com. And what this allows us to do is create a button very quickly, very efficiently, that performs well enough for our taste. And we're just going to manually paste the code into our document as a time saver. So first things first, what do you want your button to say? We want to say read more ... Font family is fine. Font color is good. Font size is good. So you get a live preview here on the right. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Now the text part is done. We'll open the box part. Padding top, right, bottom, left. That's a pretty decent size over here. The border is where we'll control, for example, the radius. Now, our buttons in our mock-up, right there, aren't really the little pill-shaped buttons. They, you can add some round corners. These are more square, though. So let's reduce the border radius here. Let's go down, down, down. It looks pretty nice right there. Square with some nice soft edges right there. So I'm going to put a border radius of 9, nice round number, 10, sorry. Border color, we don't really activate it. See, the checkbox is off, so it doesn't add a border color. If you turn that on, it'll look like this, which, do we want that? Let's see. Yeah, there seems to be like a thin gray line around there. So let's activate that border. We'll choose the color somewhere on there, I guess. Yeah, looks good. Solid line width is 1, just a thin one. And now we can change the background color, which we see here is orange in our mock-up. We don't have to be super precise with actual values, although we can do that if we want. Let's just choose something that's in the neighborhood. So that looks pretty good. So that's the start color, and the end color, unless we want to do a gradient like this, I don't recommend it. I would just copy and paste the same value in the end color, and then we have a nice flat image. If you want to go a bit darker, you can change that to a bit darker, and you can see you get that nice 3D effect. Yeah, let's leave it like that. It's not too bad. And you could choose up here whether you want a gradient or a solid. So it makes life easier. So there's our button. Read more uppercase. Aha, see? Inconsistency. Go back to the font area and change this to read more. And we'll just throw in the ellipsis for kicks. So we got the state where it's off, and we also want to include a hover state. And you know what? That doesn't look too bad. If you hover over it, it turns blue. I could live with this. I don't even have to change the hover. But if you did, you can choose a different color. For example, you can make it purple or some other value there. Oof, that's ugly. That's better. Okay, we'll stick with that. So what we've done here is we've generated the code for this button. So it created a class for us, and it created all the necessary CSS that we need to reproduce that in our browser window, including all the different browser-specific and vendor-specific targeting. So Chrome and Safari and all that stuff. So this is ready to go as is, but this is only the CSS. We still have to manually create the container and the link in our HTML, so we'll do that next. First, let's start by copying this in its entirety. Don't leave out any pieces, so let's copy that. And now we're going to switch back to Dreamweaver. We're going to go to our style sheet file, styles.css. And usually I would want to stick this in an area that makes sense, seeing as it's all kind of linear, my document so far. So main document section is here. I want to probably stick it in this vicinity so that if I'm looking for it, all of this stuff is close together. So I'm going to post it right under the content area. There you go. So I added my button class as well as my hover pseudo class. So now I have to create something that I can assign this class to that's going to become a button. How do we do that? Go back to my starter page over here, and in my content area, and again I'm in design view because it makes it a bit easier. I'm just going to press enter, and what I'm going to do is insert. I'm going to insert basically my link. I'm going to say read more ... And normally this would link to the full article other than just the excerpt, but in our case, much like the navigation bar, we just want to create a fake link. So to do that, go back to your properties down here, switch to HTML, and now for link, just assign a little hashtag and press enter. And you see that in the code, it creates the little tag over here for a link. And if we look over here, it looks like a link nicely. The next part is really easy. We just select this, the read more ... and we can now assign the class, which we've already integrated into our style sheet, called btn, and there it is. So once we assign it there, but let's be careful here. There, okay, good. Just wanted to make sure that it assigned the class to the right tag, which is our link, which is exactly what it did. So there it is in all its glory. Doesn't look pretty here, but if we switch to live view, we'll see that it more accurately represents the design that we did earlier. Sorry, zoom out a bit. Now it's a bit large. We might have to add a few additional elements in our to style it properly. So let's go back to our CSS designer now and find that BTN. There it is, BTN. And we're going to change a few attributes. So just follow along. We're going to change the text size because it's a little extreme. So font size, not 20 pixels. We're going to basically reduce that to maybe 12 pixels. That's fine. We're going to remove the Arial family, which was assigned by the system, because it'll default to the font that we're using. Very nice. And you can see it's already a lot smaller, but maybe we can reduce the padding around the text and the margin so that it doesn't look so so huge. So maybe 5. Oh, at the top, no, too small. Let's bring it up to 7 and bring the bottom to, there we go. Oh, maybe 5 was right. 5. And we'll make this 5 also. Nice. And now we have a bit too much space on the left and on the right over here. So let's reduce that from 20. Let's bring it down to 10. All right, where'd it go? There it is. And 10 on the right. Now, of course, all these values that we're changing, instead of clicking all these little things, really, you could just switch to your style sheet, and all these values are available here. Never forget that. Any of these values, if you don't like using the designer, are available in the CSS. You just have to switch over to it and play around with these values so you'll find something nice. There's one other thing that we need to do here, and that's push it towards the right so that it floats towards the right. Bingo. And now it matches our mock-up. You know, it's almost identical. The corners are a little rounder, but I find that it actually looks a bit nicer that way. So let's leave it that way. And yeah, pretty sharp. There you go. And like I said, once you have one, it's so simple to now switch back to your source code. You know, find that element. There it is. So P, grab this whole line there. Copy it. Let me zoom in a bit. Right, so there it is. It's on its own line, so you want to grab that paragraph also. There's the link, the read more. Here it is. That's all that button is. Copy it here. And further down, that's it. You just paste it in. Paste it in there. And paste it in there, I believe. And you should be in business. Let's see. Read more, read more. Oh, this one's a little too much. Let's see what's happening here. Ah, and it's because I pasted it below the clear fix, which is not something we want to do. We want to paste it above, so you can just drag it above there, and that should look a lot better. There you go. Nice. Sweet. It's nice when a good plan comes together. this is a great place to save your work. And what we're going to do next is tackle some of the sidebar content, specifically the form. I'm going to switch to design view here. And we already have containers for the form element, for the Facebook feed. You know what? Let's put in the Facebook feed, just get that out of the way because it's very easy to do. Delete the text there. And, you know, make sure your cursor is in place between this container. And we're going to insert an image from our assets. And it's the Facebook feed placeholder. Okay. Boom. Nice. Look at that. Right in there. Now let's tackle the form. Select this text. We're going to replace it. We're going to insert form. And from here, these are all the form elements that are available to you. We want to start with the actual form tag. So let's click the form tag. Good. And what it does is it creates, you know, the form tag that we'll be posting additional stuff into. And from that point on, we just want to insert a couple of items. So we'll insert form element called text. So text field, we'll modify that so that it doesn't say text field. It'll say nothing. We'll remove that. And if you click here on this form field, you'll notice that down here in your properties bar, suddenly you have a whole bunch of new features that you've never seen before because, you know, this is a context sensitive one. Really the only thing we want to do here is just add some placeholder text, and we'll say enter your name. Okay, so it updates the HTML here. And another thing that we've noticed is that this input is outside of the form tag. So what you want to do is make sure that the closing form tag is not, you know, doesn't exclude any stuff from being in it. So I'm just going to make some space here for us. There you go. So the opening form tag, closing form tag, and the form elements, like the input, will be saved within. Same thing with the next field we're going to add is email. So insert form email. Again, nothing you know, earth-shattering here. Refresh. You should see that second field. If you click on it now, again, you should see the properties bar down here, and this one is specific to email. So you can toggle certain elements, like this has to be a required field. It has to be filled out, and because it's an email field, it'll check to make sure it's a real email address. And placeholder text, we want it to say enter your email. Lovely. So let's zoom out again. And the last thing we want to add is insert form a submit button right there. So again, you know, we can style this to make it look like the read more button. But let's see if we just assign the class to it, what happens. So class button, what does that end up looking like? Meh, not so great. Let's see what it looks like live. Yeah, not the prettiest thing you'll ever see, but let's disable that. So let's click none. And for now, just leave it as a plain form button. Save your work. And to, you know, match the mock-up over here, we have a little heading, and these are centered a little bit. So let's do that. in our, okay, we can delete our placeholder text. The form goes here. We can call this, you know, we can enter our newsletter sign up. Newsletter sign up. Select that. We're going to turn this into heading 3. Right. There you go. And this entire container, which is called sign up form, if we find it here in our CSS designer, where is it? Main content box, sign up form, there it is. What we can do to save a lot of time is just click text align center in the CSS designer. So find your sign up form, which is the entire container for your form. Select it, and now just choose text align center, and what will happen is your elements will all just get automatically centered in that box. Lovely. If you want to see what that looks like, you're better off switching to live view to get a better feel for it. Lovely. So we have our heading, we have our box here, an email, and if you click submit, nothing will happen, of course, because we haven't set the form up to do anything. But that's how the form is done. One last thing before we wrap up this particular lesson is to add the social sharing icons. And to add social sharing icons, again, we're going to look at a third-party website rather than, you know, doing it all piecemeal. We're just going to find a ready-to-go solution and use that. So again, I'm going to switch back to design view here. The area I'm going to be working in is this area. This is placeholder text I'll be replacing. So let me go find what I'm looking for, and that's on a web browser. And the website is called addtoany.com. So point your browser there and fire it up. And when you get there, you'll see this nice splash page. And it'll ask you to get the share buttons. So the share buttons can be used for a variety of different systems. We just want the plain website ones. So click the website link over here. So we want share buttons. You can actually choose which services show here. So I'll show you a real quick thing here, and it's super easy. It's just drag and drop. So right now by default you have Google, Facebook, Twitter. If you want to share maybe to your LinkedIn as well, you can just grab it and drag it over to the side. You can reorder things, so just by dragging things around you can do that. Let's add one more. Why not Evernote? Sure, why not? So let's just drag that into the list. There you go. And of course, when you're done, click the button that says done. Go back. And the next thing you want to do is get the button code. So click this button over here, the big blue one. And you'll want to grab this code that's generated down here and paste it into your page. So we're going to grab this and copy it. Go back to Dreamweaver, and you know where we said, you know, our social sharing icons go here, placeholder text is. Again, this is probably something that's easier to do in the code. You want to, you know, delete the placeholder text in the social container div, and now paste in that code that we just copied. So let's take a look at what's happening here. It created a new div container, and there are a whole slew of styles that are associated with this. We don't have to create any of these styles, but we have access to them. We can override them. It's pulling in the style sheet from the Add to Any website. and you know, the buttons are here, and then that's the end of that. And there's also a little script, a little JavaScript that's being used to pull in all this information and to add the functionality. So we're done. It's a one click and paste operation. If we switch to live view, it works right off the bat. You can scroll down now, and here are your social icons, and you can share. So the plus will open up this drop down. You can share to Facebook, etc. And that's that. If you really wanted to, you can you know, play around with the container. Oops, the social container over here. There it is. So you have, you know, social container. And if you want to center them a bit more, you know, you can add a bit of padding on the left, maybe 25 pixels. There you go. Maybe even 20. So you just kind of eyeball it until they're centered. Of course, you can go into other classes that they supply and make it a bit more complicated for yourself, but for the purposes of this exercise, this will work fine. You know, you can just fine-tune left and right until you feel happy with it. And that's social media. We have very few things left to tackle on this page. Obviously the logo and the tagline, but everything else seems to look pretty sharp, and of course the footer. One last exercise, guys, and it's the home stretch. After that, you'll be done. Save your work, and I'll see you in the next and final video. Talk to you soon.